You know, for over 2,000 years, almost all of Western philosophy, science, and even politics can be traced back to this huge clash between two absolute giants, Plato and his own student Aristotle. And look, this is way more than just some dusty old debate about idealism versus realism. It's a conflict that was born from major historical events, and it's one that, believe it or not, is still shaping our world right now. And really, it all boils down to this one single powerful question. Is the ultimate truth of our world found somewhere outside of it all, in some kind of perfect, unseen place? Or is it found inside the very things that we can actually touch, see, and measure? Your answer to that basically puts you in one of two camps. Okay, let's dive right into this, because to really get their philosophies, you have to understand the historical shocks that shaped them. You gotta get that their worldviews weren't just created in a vacuum. They were direct, powerful reactions to the chaotic and transformative times they were living through. So right here, you see two totally different starting points. For Plato, the big defining event was a trauma. It was a betrayal by the entire system. But for Aristotle, it was an opportunity, a massive explosion of new information. I mean, just imagine watching your mentor, the wisest person you know, being condemned to death by a popular vote. For Plato, this was not some abstract philosophical problem. This was a deeply personal tragedy, and it taught him a really brutal lesson about the world of human affairs. So you can see his thinking, right? If the real world, run by the whims of the majority, could screw up that badly, then true knowledge and real justice couldn't possibly live here. He basically concluded that the world we see with our senses has to be a flawed, deceptive shadow of some greater, perfect reality. Aristotle, on the other hand, he came up in a completely different era. His one-time student, Alexander the Great, was out conquering the known world, and all these reports of new animals, plants, different cultures, and political systems were just flooding back into Greece. It was basically the age of big data, but, ancient Greek style. And all of this new, real-world information demanded a new way of thinking. You couldn't just sit around and theorize about the perfect idea of a fish. No, you had to get out there, observe hundreds of real fish, and start classifying them. So Aristotle's entire philosophy was born from this very practical need to make sense of the world as it actually is. So these totally different life experiences, they led them straight to that fundamental split we started with. This is the core disagreement that would just echo through the centuries. Plato argued for this whole other realm of ideas, these perfect, unchanging blueprints for everything that exists. So for him, the truth of a chair is the perfect idea of a chair, and all the physical chairs we see are just pale imitations. But Aristotle comes back and says, no. The truth, the essence of a chair, is found in the chair itself, by studying what it's made of and what it's for. And this example with beauty just makes the difference crystal clear. For Plato, when you see a beautiful flower, you're just getting a little glimpse, like a faint memory, of the perfect idea of beauty that exists somewhere else. For Aristotle, you figure out what beauty is by observing thousands of flowers and finding the patterns and common features that make them beautiful. One guy looks up and away, the other looks down and in. Okay, and here's where it gets really cool, because this one single disagreement about where truth lies, it creates this massive ripple effect, this cascade of differences across every field of thought you can imagine, from how we learn to how we should govern ourselves. So how do we actually know things? Plato believed it was this leap of pure intellect. He loved math because the properties of a triangle are true whether you ever see a real triangle or not. But Aristotle, the original scientist, argued that knowledge is a slow climb, built brick by brick from what we experience and observe around us. What does it mean to be a good person? For Plato, it's about understanding the perfect idea of the good. For Aristotle, it's way more down to earth. He famously said we become good by doing good things. Goodness isn't some abstract concept you have to know. It's a habit you have to build through action, day in and day out. And when it comes to politics, wow, the difference is night and day. Plato, still traumatized by democracy, wanted this ideal state run by a wise elite, these philosopher kings who could perceive the real truth. But Aristotle, always the pragmatist, is said to have studied over 200 real-world constitutions to figure out what actually works. His conclusion? The most stable state is one with a strong, thriving middle class. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This is all ancient history, who cares? But stick with me here, because this 2,000-year-old debate is basically the hidden software running underneath so many of our most intense modern arguments. Think about it. Every time you hear a politician arguing for a bold, idealistic vision versus one who's all about practical, data-driven solutions, you're hearing Plato versus Aristotle. An AI built on pure mathematical logic versus one that learns from massive data sets, that's Plato versus Aristotle. A visionary CEO versus a pragmatic, by-the-numbers manager. The pattern is undeniable. This framework is literally everywhere. So, where does all this leave us? I mean, who was right? Well, that's actually the wrong question to be asking. Platonic thinking, that's what gives us our why. It's the power to imagine a better world, a perfect goal, a mission that truly inspires us. It's the architect's grand blueprint. And Aristotelian thinking? Well, that's what gives us our how. It's the power to look at the materials we actually have and figure out the most effective way to build something real. It's the engineer's careful analysis. Look, you absolutely need both. A vision without a practical plan is just a daydream, and a plan without an inspiring vision is just busy work. This isn't about picking a team. These are two essential, different tools in our mental toolkit.
So the real skill, the true challenge for you and for me, is developing the wisdom to know which tool to pull out for which problem. And that's a question that is just as important today as it was back in ancient Athens.